My name is Vivica Lapuente. I'm 31 years old. When I was 24, my father stood at the front of a banquet hall in Ottawa with a microphone in his hand and told 63 people gathered for my brother's law school graduation dinner, "We always knew one of our kids was exceptional. Tonight proves we were right." He was looking at my brother when he said it. He did not look at me once during that toast. I was sitting at the far end of table 3, next to my brother's girlfriend's elderly uncle, who spent most of the evening asking me to repeat myself, and I felt something shift inside me, the way ice does in spring. Not breaking, just giving way all at once. I set down my wine glass. I folded my napkin. And when dinner ended, I drove home to my apartment on Gladstone Avenue and did not return to that house for 5 years. Then, 8 weeks ago, my cousin sent me a message at 11:47 on a Tuesday night. "He's not okay. He hasn't been for a long time. I think you're the only one he'd actually listen to." She didn't explain who she meant. She didn't have to. What she didn't know was that I had spent those 5 years becoming someone that house could no longer reach. She didn't know about my condo in Halifax, my position at the university, my savings, my Thursday evenings with my therapist. She didn't know that the brother they had built their entire identity around had been quietly falling apart, while our parents maintained the story that everything was fine, because the story was the whole point. This is what happened when the son they chose to love first asked the daughter they'd forgotten to love enough for help. Let me take you back. The Lapointe family. 14 Ridgecrest Crescent, Kanata, Ontario. Pale yellow brick. A driveway my father kept immaculate. My father, a senior project manager for a federal infrastructure firm. My mother, a school board administrator for the Ottawa Carleton district. 2 kids, 4 years apart. From the outside, a family that sent Christmas cards with everyone smiling in coordinated colours. From the inside, something more like a solar system, where my brother was the sun and I was a planet no one had bothered to name. My brother Sebastian was born in 1990. I arrived in 1994. Same parents, same house, entirely different experience of both. Sebastian won the regional science fair in grade 8. I won the school writing contest in grade 9. And my mother said, at dinner that night, that it was nice, but to make sure I didn't let it distract me from math. Sebastian got into Queen's for undergrad on a scholarship. I was accepted to Carleton on merit, which is a good school, which I loved, which my father once described to a colleague at a barbecue as a solid choice, given her options. He said it while I was standing next to him holding a paper plate. The dinner table told the whole story without anyone having to say a word out loud. Every Sunday at 5:30, same arrangement. Sebastian beside my father. Me beside my mother, closest to the kitchen, closest to where she needed someone to get up and check on things. My father would ask Sebastian about his courses, his professors, his plans, his ideas. He would listen the way you listen to something you already know is going to be good. Then he would glance at me and ask something like, "How's your semester?" With the energy of someone reading an item off a checklist they hadn't written themselves. I started keeping a record the year I turned 16. I needed something solid to hold on to when everything felt like weather. I tracked how many times my father asked Sebastian a follow-up question at dinner versus me. Over 6 months, 41 times for Sebastian, 9 for me. I counted how many times my mother came to my bedroom door to check on me versus Sebastian's room when she knew we were both stressed about school. 14-1. I wrote it all in the back of a blue notebook I kept in the drawer under my sweaters. Numbers didn't make it hurt less, they just made it feel real, which was something. The university application process was the clearest evidence I'd ever had. My brother's applications, my parents sat at the kitchen table with him for weeks. My mother proofread every essay. My father called 2 family friends who were alumni of schools Sebastian was applying to, just to ask about culture and fit. They drove him to Kingston for a campus visit. They drove him to Toronto. The Queen's acceptance letter arrived and my mother framed it. My applications, I filled out alone on my laptop in my bedroom, with the window cracked open in November, because the radiator in my room ran too hot and no one had ever fixed it. I asked my mother once if she'd read my personal statement. She said she trusted me and she'd look later. She never looked. I submitted everything myself, got into Carleton with a scholarship, and told my parents at dinner. My father said, "Good for you," and then asked Sebastian whether he'd heard back from the residence office about his room assignment. The scholarship covered 60% of my first year. I worked 20 hours a week at a cafe on Bank Street to cover the rest. My parents paid for Sebastian's housing, meals and books for 4 years without him having to ask. I never asked either. The asking felt like it would confirm something I didn't want confirmed. The night that split everything open was June 7th, 2019. Sebastian's law school graduation dinner. He'd finished at Ottawa Law, second in his class. He had articled at a firm downtown, an offer already on the table. My parents had organised a dinner at a private room at a restaurant in the Byward Market for 63 people. I know the number because I stood at the entrance for a moment before going in and saw the seating chart on the easel and counted. My invitation had come from my mother in a text message. "Dinner is at 7. You're at table 3. Wear something nice." I had driven from Kingston, where I was doing my master's in public administration at Queen's, 3 hours in traffic, stopped for gas on the 416, ate a granola bar in the parking lot of a Petro-Canada because I hadn't had time for dinner. I had bought a dress in the fall at a boutique on Princess Street, green $56 on sale. I had done my makeup in the rearview mirror before walking in. Table 3 was near the side corridor that led to the kitchen. There was nothing wrong with it exactly. There was nothing right about it either. My dinner companions were my parents' neighbours who didn't know Sebastian well. An older couple from my father's work who kept talking to each other, and my aunt's boyfriend who had been to the restaurant before and spent a good portion of the evening recommending dishes to everyone, regardless of whether they'd asked. I introduced myself to the couple beside me. By the end of dinner, the woman had called me Vanessa twice, and I had not corrected her. The speeches began at 8:15. My mother went first. She was warm, she was brief, she was lovely. She talked about Sebastian's determination and his kindness, and the time he helped a stranger change a tire in a parking lot when he was 17. People smiled. My father went second. My father knew how to own a room. He had the kind of physical ease that comes from never having had to wonder if you belonged. He picked up the microphone and held it like it was something he'd been waiting all evening to hold. 55 years ago, he said, my own father told me that the measure of a man is what he builds. Tonight I'm watching my son walk into a career that he earned, at a firm that wanted him, and I am looking at proof that some of us get it right. He paused. We always knew one of our kids was exceptional. Tonight proves we were right. Applause. Genuine, warm, rolling through the room. My mother pressed her hand to her chest. Sebastien, at the head of the table with his girlfriend beside him, ducked his head the way he always did when he was pleased, but wanted to appear modest. The firm's senior partner was there, Sebastian's law school friends. Family friends who had watched him grow up. They all applauded. I was at table 3. I was the other kid. Every person in that room heard what those words meant, even if they didn't register it consciously. We always knew one of our kids was exceptional. 1. The toast lasted about 2 minutes. I counted the applause at 12 seconds. I counted because I needed to hold on to something real. My father raised his glass to Sebastian, who made this easy to be proud of. More applause. Glasses lifted. The room filled with conversation again. I sat still for exactly 6 minutes. I know because I checked my phone at 8:27 and again at 8:33. Then I put my napkin on the table, picked up my purse, and walked toward the side exit near the corridor to the kitchen. My mother appeared at my elbow before I reached the door. I hadn't seen her cross the room. I hadn't seen her notice me at all for the past 3 hours. Viveka, where are you going? Home. The dessert hasn't come yet. I'm aware. She lowered her voice, tilted her head in the way she did when she was managing rather than listening. Your brother is having his moment. This isn't the night to make it about something else. I looked at her. Dad said one of his kids was exceptional, in front of 63 people. I was in the room. He meant Sebastian is exceptional. He wasn't talking about you specifically. He was talking about both of us, he said one. She inhaled slowly through her nose. You're reading into it. He said it into a microphone. Mum? Viveka. She looked over her shoulder, checking the room, checking who might see. Please don't do this here. Come back to the table and we can talk another time. There won't be another time. There's never another time. She stared at me for a moment with an expression I had spent a long time learning to read. It wasn't cruelty. It was inconvenience. I was inconveniencing her schedule, her event, her evening. Fine, she said, but don't expect this to go unnoticed. She turned and walked back toward the head table without looking back at me. I found my coat at the rack by the entrance. I walked to my car in the Bywood Market Parkade, which cost $18 for the evening. I cried for 20 minutes in the stairwell first, because I couldn't find my keys and I didn't want to sit in the car and not be able to leave. I found the keys in my coat pocket. I sat in the car for another 10 minutes. Then I drove 3 hours back to Kingston, stopped once at a Tim Hortons on the 401 for a large coffee, double-double, and arrived at my apartment at 1:23 in the morning. I checked my phone 11 times between Ottawa and Kingston. Not once did it light up with a message from anyone at that dinner. Not my father, not my mother, not Sebastian. I stopped checking somewhere around Brockville. When I got home, I sat at my kitchen table in my coat and made a decision. Not an emotional one. I had been making emotional decisions about this family for 24 years and it had cost me most of my own clarity. This was a practical one. I was going to stop being available for a life that did not include me. I blocked my parents' numbers. Then I blocked Sebastian's. Then I changed my own number 2 weeks later. I set my social media to private and removed them all. I left the family group chat. I kept 2 people. My cousin Delphine, who had texted me at 8:51 that night. I saw you leave. Are you okay? That toast was not okay. And my friend from undergrad, who had moved to Vancouver and knew all of it already. Those 2 people were my entire family. It had to be enough. The year after the dinner, I finished my master's and took a position as a policy analyst with the Nova Scotia government in Halifax. I packed my car in August 2020. I drove down the Trans-Canada alone. I signed a lease on a 1-bedroom on Robie Street for $1,350 a month, which was not cheap, but it was mine, entirely mine. And there was no one in the building who knew a single thing about the LaPointe family of Kanata. I started therapy that October. My therapist's name is Dr. Arsenault. We meet on Thursday evenings. First session, she asked me what I was hoping to get from the work. I thought about it for a long time. I want to stop rehearsing, I said. Rehearsing what? The conversation where I explained to them what they did. I've been rehearsing it since I was 16. She wrote something down. That was the beginning. I built a life that fit me. I was promoted to senior policy analyst in 2022. I moved from government to a research and policy role at Dalhousie in 2023. $78,000 a year. Benefits, a small office with a window that faces a courtyard. I bought my condo in the north end of Halifax in the spring of 2023, $387,000, which I know sounds impossible, and it almost was, but I had been saving aggressively for 4 years and I qualified for the first-time buyer incentive, and I made it work entirely on my own. I stood in the empty living room the day I got the keys, and I stayed there for a while. I didn't cry. I just stood there and understood that no one had helped me get this, and that made it more mine than anything had ever been. I made real friends. My downstairs neighbour Petra Anne, who left a note on my door in November 2020, saying she was making soup and would I like some, and from that became the kind of friend I had never known how to have before. My colleague Rashid at Dalhousie, who ate lunch at his desk every day until I asked if he wanted to go to the cafe around the corner, and after that we just always went. My friend from my running group, Ingrid, who never once in 2 years asked why I didn't go home for the holidays and never looked at me strangely for it. These people were my chosen structure. I did not take them for granted. I dated someone for most of 2022. His name was Theo. And I caught myself mid-thought because that name was already in the file, so I reached for another. His name was Callum. No, that one too. His name was Francois, 35 years old, high school geography teacher in Dartmouth, the kind of person who noticed small things. After about 4 months, he said to me one evening, "You always apologize before you say what you think." I didn't know what he meant at first. He said, "Watch. Next time you have an opinion, notice what you say before it." I watched. He was right. I said sorry before almost every thought I expressed that wasn't already approved somehow. We talked about it. I brought it to Dr. Arsenault. We spent 3 sessions on it. I was still unwinding years of dinner tables and speeches about exceptional children. Francois and I ended things the following spring, not badly, just incompatible timing and geography. But he left me the awareness. I was still finding the places where they had gotten in through the foundation. By early 2024, I felt like I had rebuilt most of what had been leveled. Good work, good people, my Thursday evenings, my condo with the window seat I had added in the living room that no one had approved or disapproved of, because I just did it, because I wanted it. I had almost stopped thinking about them for full weeks at a time. I thought I was done with that chapter. Then on a Tuesday night in February 2024 at 11:47, while I was reading in bed with a cup of tea going cold on the nightstand, my phone buzzed. My cousin Delphine's name came up. She had messaged me exactly twice in the past 5 years. Once to say she'd gotten engaged, once to say she'd had a daughter. Both times I had responded warmly, and we had not spoken again. I opened the message. "He's not okay. He hasn't been for a long time. I think you're the only one he'd actually listen to." I set the phone face down on the nightstand and finished my chapter. Then I made a fresh cup of tea. Then I sat with it at the kitchen table for a while. Then I typed, "Who do you mean exactly? And can you call me?" She called in 3 minutes. Sebastian had been struggling since 2022, she said. Maybe earlier. His relationship with his girlfriend had ended in the fall of 2022, and something had shifted in him after. He had started withdrawing, missing events, cancelling plans at the last minute. He'd left the downtown firm in early 2023, which people were told was a move to go independent. But Delphine had run into one of his former colleagues at a grocery store, and the colleague had been cagey in a way that told her the departure had not been entirely voluntary. Sebastian had been struggling with alcohol for at least 18 months, she thought, probably longer. He was living alone in a condo in the Glebe. He wasn't returning calls. He had lost weight, she could see across a room. The last time she had seen him was 2 months ago at their grandmother's birthday, and he had arrived late, left early, and looked, she said, like someone performing a version of himself that he didn't quite have the energy for anymore. "Have my parents been to see him?" I asked. Delphine paused. "Yes, but they're not. Viveka, they're telling people he's going through a transition. Your mom told someone at their church that he's taking time off to reconsider his direction. Your dad called Sebastian's old firm's senior partner, apparently, and said he'd been dealing with some family health issues. They're managing it. They're managing what people know." I pressed my eyes closed for a second. Of course they were. The story was always more important than the person inside it. "Why me?" I said. "He hasn't spoken to me in 5 years. He knows I cut contact." Delphine was quiet for a moment. "He asks about you," she said. "Not often. But he does. When I see him, sometimes he'll say something like, 'I wonder if Viveka knows.' Or he'll say something and then say, 'You know Viveka would have known how to deal with this. He thinks you chose to disappear because of him. Like he was part of the reason you left.' I had not expected that. I left because of the dinner, because of the toast, because of 24 years of everything before that. I know. But does he?" Silence. He was nervous that night, you know. He told me later he'd been anxious all day about the whole event. He said he didn't fully hear the toast until after, because he was in his own head. "And your parents told him, after you stopped responding, that you'd needed space, that you'd been dealing with some personal things, and the distance was about you needing to sort yourself out. They never told him what actually happened." I set my tea down. "They told him I needed space. Yes. They told him I chose this. Yes. I didn't hang up angrily. I just said, "Give me a few days," and ended the call, and sat at my kitchen table in Halifax at midnight in February looking at the window that was black with the street behind it, and I let myself feel all of it. Not the anger, not yet, the weight of it. 5 years. He had spent 5 years thinking his sister had decided on her own, that she didn't want to be in his life, that the silence had been my preference. I called Dr. Arsenault the next morning. We talked for 50 minutes. She asked me, as she always did when I was standing at something, "What do you actually want from this?" I said, "I think I want to find out if there's someone worth knowing under all of the person they made him." She didn't respond for a beat, then, "That's different from wanting to fix it." "Yes," I said, "I know." 4 days later, I called my mother. The number was 5 years old. It still worked. She answered on the second ring, and her voice was exactly what I remembered. Measured, controlled, slightly higher than her natural pitch when she was surprised. "Viveka, I heard Sebastian isn't doing well." A pause. "Who told you that?" "It doesn't matter. Tell me what's actually happening." What followed was 15 minutes of the careful version. She used words like adjusting and reassessing and finding his footing. I interrupted twice. The second time I asked her directly, "Is he drinking every day?" Silence. "We think so, yes. But it's not. It's a response to stress, we think. The end of the relationship, the work situation. Has anyone suggested he see someone? A treatment program, an addiction counselor?" The longest pause yet. "Your father thinks what he needs right now is family support, not to be pathologized." I had heard that word before, in a different context, used in the same way. "Mum, Sebastian is struggling with alcohol dependency." That is not pathologizing him. That is identifying what is in the room so that someone can help him with it. Her voice went tight. "We don't know that it's—" "You do know. You've known for a while. And instead of getting him help, you've been writing the press release." She said nothing. "Tell me something," I said. I kept my voice even. "After the graduation dinner, when I went silent, did you tell Sebastian what actually happened that night? Did you tell him what Dad's toast said and that I left because of it?" Silence. "Mum, we told him you'd been going through something, that you needed distance. You told him I chose this, we simplified. We didn't want to add drama during what was already a difficult." "When was the difficult time, exactly?" "When I was at table 3 while his friends gave him a standing ovation." "When was it difficult for him?" She didn't answer. "Did he ever try to contact me?" I said. "After I changed my number." Another silence, longer, more deliberate. "He asked us for your new number," she said finally. "About 6 months after you'd stopped responding. He wanted to write to you. And we told him we didn't have it." I put the phone against my collarbone and breathed for a moment. They had told him they didn't have it. He had asked. He had wanted to write to me. And they had told him they didn't know how to reach me, so that no one would have to have a conversation they had decided not to have. 6 months. He had asked 6 months in. I had been in Kingston. I had been reachable in 100 ways. They had simply decided not to connect us. I brought the phone back up. "Here is what is going to happen. I'm going to fly to Ottawa. I'm going to see Sebastian. If he's willing to get help, I'm going to help him find a program and get there. You and Dad are going to cover the cost. That is not a question. You're going to stay out of which program he chooses, and you are going to stay out of his treatment. You write the check and you step back. If and when he decides he wants you involved in his recovery, that is entirely his decision. But you don't get to manage this one. You've been managing it, and he has gotten worse." My mother's breathing was audible. "Then, we're his parents, I know." And at a dinner in his honor with 63 people present, Dad announced that one of his children was exceptional. I was in the room. "And then you let my brother believe for 5 years that I had simply chosen not to be in his life. So right now, being his parents is not a credential. Have a credit card ready. I'll be in touch." I booked a flight for that Friday. Halifax to Ottawa direct, 7:15 in the morning, $312 return. I packed for 2 nights, planned for 1. I texted Delphine, "I'm coming." She sent back one line, "He needs this more than he knows." I told Petra Ann and Rashid and Ingrid where I was going in rough terms. Petra Annie said, "Take care of yourself first." Rashid said, "Call me when you land." Ingrid said, "You don't owe them a single thing, but I think you already know what you're going to do." I landed at 9:40 on Friday morning. I rented a car at the airport. I drove to my parents' house first because I needed to see them in person before I saw him. I needed to understand what I was walking into. 14 Ridgecrest Crescent. The driveway was clear. It was February and there had been snow, and my father had shoveled it perfectly, edges straight, the way he always did. The house looked the same. It always looked the same. That was the point of houses like this. My mother met me at the door before I knocked. She looked older in a way that was not unkind, just time. She reached out to hug me, and I stepped gently to the side and came in. My father was in the living room in his chair. He stood when I came in. He still stood when women entered rooms, which was one of the things about him that always confused me. The gestures of consideration in a man who had never once considered me. Viveka. Hi, Dad. I sat on the couch. I kept my coat on. I made them tell me the real version. My father did what he always did, which was organize it like a briefing. The timeline, the sequence, the current status. He was good at that. He was good at making human disasters sound like project updates. Sebastian had started drinking heavily in 2022, they thought. It had been manageable for a while. Then not. His girlfriend had called my mother crying in the fall of 2022. And my mother had gone to his condo and found him asleep on the couch at 2 in the afternoon with 3 empty bottles on the coffee table. He'd missed a client meeting that morning. My father had called the firm on his behalf. Sebastian had steadied for a few months. Then the relationship had ended and it had gotten worse. The quiet departure from the firm. Then worse still. You knew for almost 2 years, I said. You were trying to keep the story clean. You told people he was reassessing. You called his partner and covered for him, and meanwhile he got worse. My father's jaw tightened. He didn't speak. I need you to hear something, I said. Not respond to it, not explain it, hear it. Neither of them said anything. At Sebastian's graduation dinner, Dad said into a microphone in front of 63 people that one of his children was exceptional. I was in the room. I was at table 3, near the service corridor, because that was where you put me. And I sat there and heard my father tell a room full of people that I was the less exceptional child. That one child was worth bragging about and one was not, and everyone present understood which was which. My voice did not shake. I had worked on this in so many Thursday evenings with Dr. Arsenault that it had worn smooth the way a stone does. I left that night and I didn't come back, and you told my brother I'd needed space, that it was about something going on with me. You let him think for 5 years that his sister had decided not to be in his life. When he asked you for my number, you said you didn't have it. You chose the story over the truth every single time, and he has been drowning. And you have been deciding how it looks to people at church. My mother was crying quietly. My father sat very still. I'm not here asking for an apology, I said. I'm not here because I've resolved anything about the two of you. I'm here for Sebastian. And after he's in treatment and stable, I'll make my own decisions about everything else. But right now, you need to understand what you actually did. The real version, not the one you've been living. I stood up. I'm going to see him now. I left them in that living room with the photographs on the mantel. Sebastian's graduation photo at the centre, the largest frame, the best light. I had checked without meaning to. I was not in any of them. I drove to the Glebe. Sebastian's condo was in a newer building on a quiet street off Bank. Nice address, underground parking. I buzzed from the lobby. Nothing. I buzzed again. A long pause as the then voice came through speakers. Rough. Off. The voice of someone who has been sleeping wrong for months. What? It's Viveka. 8 seconds of silence. That's not possible. It is. I'm here. Let me up. The door clicked. The elevator to the 3rd floor. His unit was 307. I knocked. A long pause. Shuffling footsteps. The door opened maybe 5 centimeters. Chain on, and I saw him. One eye. A sliver of face. That was enough to understand how bad it was. Sebastian had always been, not vain exactly, but composed. He had ironed his shirts. He had gotten his hair cut every 4 weeks since university because he liked the specific barber on Elgin Street. He had always been the version of himself that the room expected. What I saw in that 5 centimeter gap was not that person. It was someone underneath all the versions, someone who had not slept correctly in a very long time. You look different, he said. Older, I said. Let me in. The chain came off. The door opened. The condo had good bones. You could see what it had been meant to be. Good light, open plan, quality finishes his signing bonus had probably paid for. But the blinds were closed, and what came through them was thin and grey. The kitchen counter had take-out bags that had been there long enough to stop smelling like food and start smelling like something else. There were bottles on the coffee table. I counted 4 without looking for them. There were clothes in a pile near the hallway that had become furniture. He was wearing a sweatshirt inside out and pants that had not been washed recently. He was thinner than I had ever seen him. Not the kind of thin that is chosen. The kind that happens when eating stops being a thing you remember to do. I sat down on the floor, not the couch. He looked at me like I might not be real. Then he sat down too, back against the wall, knees up. Mum called you, he said. Delphine messaged me first. Then I called Mum. He made a sound that was almost a laugh. The cavalry is just me. And I didn't come here for them. I need you to know that before anything else. He looked at the floor. I thought you'd just... He stopped, rubbed his face with one hand. I thought you'd decided. After the dinner, after I didn't hear from you, I thought you'd made a decision. I know. I tried to get your number from them. About 6 months after. I know that too. They said they didn't have it. They had it. He went still. They had it. Yes. The expression that moved across his face was something I didn't have a word for immediately. I thought about it later. It was the expression of someone who has been carrying a version of a story for years and has just been told that a central fact of that story was wrong. Not grief exactly, more like the specific vertigo of realizing the map you've been using was the wrong map all along. I thought you didn't want. I thought I was part of why you left. You were in the room when the toast happened, but you weren't the reason I left. I left because for 24 years I was at table 3 and no one found that strange. He put his head back against the wall, closed his eyes. Do you know what it's like, he said, being the one they point to? Tell me? He exhaled slowly. You can never just succeed. You have to succeed in a way that justifies everything they decided about you before you'd done anything. Every good thing I did, it wasn't really mine. It was proof that they were right to choose me. And anything that went wrong, he stopped. When the firm let me go. I didn't even tell them for 2 months. I told them I was going independent. I knew if I said what actually happened, it wouldn't be about me. It would be about what it meant for them. I thought about my blue notebook, my tally of dinner conversations. He had been keeping records too, just different ones, in a different language, one that had no paper to hold them. I'm not pretending I wasn't angry at you, I said. I was. You sat at that head table while Dad said what he said, and you laughed. I saw you laugh. He opened his eyes, looked at me. I know that you didn't know what you were doing. I know you'd had a glass or 2 by then. I know you were performing the role the evening required. But I saw it. I'm sorry, he said. I'm sorry for that night and for not seeing it sooner, what was happening to you in that house. For being the easier choice for them for so long. I let them do that. I didn't stop it. I didn't rush toward forgiveness. I let the apology sit there, real this time. From someone who had actually thought about what he was apologizing for. I found a program, I said. It's residential, 90 days, in the Annapolis Valley in Nova Scotia. It's evidence-based, medical supervision, individual and group support. The intake coordinator is named Sybil and she's been expecting my call since Wednesday. The cost is $28,000. Mum and Dad are covering it. You don't have to think about the money at all. I looked at him steadily. But I need to know you're willing to go, not for them. Not for the firm or the person you were before all of this. For you. Because you are worth putting back together and I believe that. But you need to believe it too, or the 90 days won't mean anything. He was quiet for a long time, long enough that I thought he might say he wasn't ready. Then he said, "I don't know if I can do this. You don't have to know how, you just have to go." He nodded. Small. Like it cost him. I called Sybil that afternoon. There was a space available the following Wednesday. I drove Sebastian to our parents' house to get some things he needed. He moved slowly in a way that had nothing to do with reluctance. My mother kept offering things: tea, food, help with his bag. My father stood in the kitchen doorway and said nothing. When Sebastian came back downstairs with a duffel, my father started to say something, began a sentence with, "Sebastian, I want you to know." And Sebastian looked at him and said, "Not today, Dad." And my father stopped. For what I suspected was one of the first times in his life in relation to his son, he simply stopped. I drove Sebastian to a hotel near the airport that night. He didn't want to stay with them. I wasn't offering my own space for the night. Not yet. We ate room service. Soup, bread rolls, a pot of tea. He told me about the past 2 years. The specific details I hadn't heard. I listened without trying to fix any of it, just listened. Around 11 he said, "I can't believe you actually came." "I almost didn't," I said. He nodded. He looked out the hotel window at the parking lot lights. "Does it mean more that you almost didn't?" "I think so," I said. "Yeah." Wednesday morning, February 14th, 2024. I drove him to the airport at 5:50 a.m. His flight to Halifax connected there, and then a shuttle to the facility in the valley. We stood at the security entrance, and I handed him a folder. Program information, emergency contacts, what to expect in the first week. He held it to his chest for a second before putting it in his bag. Then he hugged me. He was too thin and he smelled like hotel shampoo, and underneath it, something stale that would take a long time to fully leave. I held on anyway. "You don't have to wait on me," he said into my shoulder. "I'm going to be here anyway." He stepped back. His eyes were wet. "Do you think we can figure out how to actually know each other?" I thought about it the way Dr. Arsenault taught me. Honestly, not hopefully. "I think we can make something real. It won't be what we should have had. But something real is better." He nodded. He picked up his bag. He turned once at the rope barrier and raised his hand. I raised mine. He went through. I stood there until I couldn't see him anymore. That was 8 weeks ago. Sebastian has been in the program for 8 weeks. He calls me on Sunday evenings when the program schedules outside contact. We talk for 30, sometimes 50 minutes. The conversations are still finding their shape, still careful in places, but they belong to us, not to anyone else's idea of what we should be to each other. Two people who came from the same family in completely different ways, trying to be honest with each other for the first time. He's asked me twice about our parents. What I think he should do with them, eventually. I've told him both times that's his entirely to decide, and that I'll respect whatever he chooses, and that I'm not carrying that verdict for him. My parents have sent 3 emails since February. Short ones. My mother asking for updates. My father sending one that said he'd like to speak when I was ready. I've replied to 2 of them with minimal information. He's doing well, the program is good, nothing further. I don't know yet what I'll do with that. That's not indecision, that's a choice still being made. My life in Halifax is exactly what I left it. My condo, my window seat, Petra Anna's Tuesday dinner, Rashid's genuinely terrible book recommendations that I read anyway. My Thursdays with Dr. Arsenault, who asked me 3 weeks ago, "What do you understand now that you didn't before you went?" I sat with it for a full minute before I answered. I understand that I could walk back into the thing that shaped me and not lose what I'd built. I could stand in that living room with those photographs and speak clearly and leave when I chose and still know exactly who I was on the drive back to the airport. "That's not a small thing." "No," she said. "It isn't." Sebastian gets out in May. He's already started talking about what comes next. A smaller firm, maybe, something without the weight of what the last one carried. Something that's his because he chose it, not because someone decided it was what he should want. He called last Sunday and said, "I've been thinking about the fact that you showed up. I think it meant you decided I was a person worth showing up for, even when I hadn't earned it." I said, "I decided you were someone who'd been handed a role just like I had. and that neither of us had really had a say in who we got to be in that house. He was quiet for a moment. Then, "I want to be your brother. For real. Not the version of it that they approved." "I'd like that," I said. "Let's take it slowly." People ask me sometimes, in my own head at 2 in the morning, whether I should have stayed gone, whether going back meant something it didn't mean, whether showing up was a kind of forgiveness. It wasn't. I showed up because my brother was someone drowning in a current that our parents had built and maintained and decorated nicely, and I was the only person willing to throw him something real. Not a managed version of events, not a protected story. Something real. I didn't go home. I went to find my brother in a house that was never a home, and then I came back to Halifax, to my condo, to my window seat, to the life I built from nothing while they were busy deciding which child mattered. My name is Viveka Lapointe. I'm 31 years old. I was the child at table 3, near the service corridor, close enough to be present, far enough to be forgettable. I was the other kid, the one the toast didn't mean. I am not that anymore. I never was, actually. I just had to drive to Ottawa in February and walk into that apartment building and sit down on my brother's floor to finally completely know it. And if you are at your own table 3 right now, the afterthought, the one the speeches skip over, the child who understood early that the room was not arranged with you in mind, I want you to know something. Their inability to see you is not information about your value. It is information about their limits. Build a life so full, so yours, that their version of you has nowhere to land. And then, if you choose to go back for someone worth it, go back as the person you built, not the one they named. That's the only way back that doesn't cost you everything you earned.